Digimon Liberator kicked off the series with style, introducing the enigmatic Freezing Knight and its partner Hexeblaumon as the first challenge Shoto and Teromon have to overcome. And the Magic Knight does not disappoint, embodying and exceeding our expectations of what a good blue card can be. So in this episode of Welcome to Liberator, we're going to look at why Hexeblaumon is such an absolute house of a card, and how he fits in with everything that the color blue has to offer. Blue's color identity can best be summed up with three words: speed, control, and advantage. The color plays an extremely streamlined and efficient game, gaining tons of memory, drawing tons of cards, and disrupting the opponent's plays by either freezing cards in place or bouncing them back to hand. Blue is also an aggressive color, with its Digimon swinging with immunity from battle damage and swinging multiple times while they're at it. Blue definitely gets a ton of love from Bandai, and as a result, it's usually a top tier color. In fact, there's usually one blue deck that will dominate a couple of formats in a row, get hit on the ban list, and then continue as a highly competitive choice for even longer. Melga and Mirage Galgamon come to mind. Hexeblaumon occupies an interesting spot in the continuum of blue decks and blue boss monsters more specifically. BT5 Hexeblaumon was the first deck to properly make Source Strip a win condition, allowing it to freeze an entire board and swing uncontested until the opponent was destroyed. But it fell off pretty quickly when Tomihime showed up and did the job better. EX7 Hexeblaumon is a fantastic top-end piece, armed with 4 fantastic abilities and a number of wins under its belt already. Just one caveat though, those wins are not within its own archetype. See, both Hexeblaumon cards are pretty good by the standards of when they were released, but the same can't be said about their main lines. Pretty much all of the Bluecomons, Paledramons, and Crisp Paledramons we've received have been mediocre at best, doing little to distinguish a Hexeblaumon deck from any bulk bin archetype. It turns out that Hexeblaumon is usually better as a generic level 6, slotting in to help other blue decks deal with complex or extremely niche threats in the meta. In fact, EX7 has been doing precisely that, helping decks like Imperial, Mirage, and the Galaxy Toolbox beat out Mother Reaper control thanks to the mechanics of its Ice-Clad ability. And really, this is no surprise. Blue is one of the colors that's more open in its design, so you will frequently see different archetypes splashed together to form a relatively cohesive pile. Again, look at Mirage Galgamon, which is just barely a tribal deck anymore with all the generic tools it uses in building its stacks. So hey, Hexeblaumon is in good company. EX7 Hexeblaumon is one of the best cards out of the Digimon Liberator set, featuring a new keyword in Ice-Clad, which compares Digivolution sources instead of DP when battling non-security Digimon, a handy security attack +1, the ability to strip 4 sources from anything when digivolving, and then bottom deck a tamer if there's no Digimon with sources remaining on the board, and a passive skill on the opponent's turn that prevents enemy Digimon from suspending if they have equal or fewer sources than Hexeblaumon. Yes, this card is nuts, but Hexeblaumon is not flawless. First of all, it's slow with a hefty 4 Evo cost, and lacks protection, meaning it can be removed fairly easily. So, to patch up its flaws, we need to use another archetype or engine, and Blue Flare happens to fit the bill perfectly. Blue Flare is a Digicross based deck. Digicross is a mechanic that lets you place materials into the sources of a powerful Digimon to reduce its play cost. For example, this Metal Greymon can use a Greymon and Male Birdramon as materials, reducing its cost by 2 for each material placed. So if you use both cards, you can reduce its cost from 7 to 3. On top of that, Digicross archetypes usually feature mechanics called Save and Material Save, which essentially allow you to conserve materials under your tamers when your Digimon get deleted. Your tamers, like Kiriha, have effects that let you use the materials you save underneath them for a Digicross. Altogether, this creates a powerful resource loop that helps you get powerful Digimon into play fairly efficiently, while ensuring a steady stream of damage as well. Your 2 Metal Greymons are your main playmakers, with the BT10 version stunning upwards of 3 Digimon with equal or lower sources, and the EX4 variant allowing you to strip any 2 sources from under your opponent's Digimon. Both complement Hexeblaumon's game plan beautifully, allowing you to lock down the board while chipping away at the opponent's security. EX4 Male Birdramon is the material you care about the most here, since it confers jamming to its stack unconditionally, allowing both your Metal Greymons and Hexeblaumon to blast through the opponent's security. Blue Flare as an archetype has a lot of space, so the deck can also afford to run a nice Ace Digimon suite to back up your main game plan. All of these Ace cards provide a measure of removal and control, and usually those revolve around stripping sources and giving you the ability to massively disrupt anything that you haven't frozen in place. Zudomon Ace will selectively strip sources and then bounce something sourceless. Vikemon Ace will allow you to de-digivolve something quite a bit, freeze anything with 1 or fewer sources in play, and then pop anything with 1 or fewer sources when attacking. Imperial Dramon Paladin Mode Ace will allow you to source strip everything on the opponent's board, return everything in either their trash or your trash to the bottom of the deck, and on the offensive, you can bottom deck something with no sources in order to restand, not on a once per turn. And then there's Ukomon, who provides a little extra speed by gaining a memory and resetting your breeding area when you promote it. Keep this little guy in mind, because we'll be seeing more of him soon in the series. And then there's BT5 Omnimon to help close out games with a well-timed blitz. It's tough to pin down Hexeblaumon's specific matchup spread, since its own archetype won't really be functional until at least the first special booster set, when the next wave of Ice Snow cards arrive. And we're not really here to talk about Blue Flare, so let's talk more about how its core mechanics play into the color pie. Red is the color of aggression, and being able to outright deny the opponent the ability to swing and trigger their effects is massive. Hexeblaumon can be deleted, yes, but large body removal is often limited to level 6s, and more likely than not, your opponent will be forced to build in the back to properly address your stack, allowing you to keep the initiative for much of the match. The high DP of red Digimon also doesn't account for much, since Iceclad lets source counts decide the outcome of a battle instead. Blue is another aggressive color, but I would argue that it's even more vulnerable to Hexeblaumon, since blue decks tend to be tamer reliant. By constantly spinning tamers to the bottom of the deck and denying early aggression, Hexeblaumon prevents blue decks from accruing resources and overwhelming you. Green decks are actually quite the struggle, because while you can freeze large swarms, you can't remove them, and so they will quickly overwhelm you. Green decks also have easier access to stun effects than you do, and can keep Hexeblaumon in place until they can build up to their own boss monsters and then usually spin you to the bottom of the deck. Yellow decks are also an issue because they aren't too concerned with battle and can outgrind Hexeblaumon through repeated healing, security attack debuffs, and punishing it for swinging at security, since Iceclad doesn't work against security Digimon and definitely won't save you against their numerous security bombs. Purple decks are a bit of a mixed bag. They tend to be combo oriented, so denying them their sources can slow them down tremendously. But on the other hand, you can inadvertently fill their trash and allow them to pop off when they do out your stack. But you're still probably edging purple out in general, because all of their floating effects will only put a sourceless body on board more often than not, which won't always be able to do much in the face of a Hexeblaumon. And then there are black decks, which are arguably the most done in by Hexeblaumon's effects. See, black decks tend to utilize a lot of effects that involve tucking or amassing sources, such as Machine Dramon or Alphamon. But with your ability to remove those sources, you can often render the opponent's stack as little more than a vanilla. Like purple, black also has a ton of floating effects, which will leave sourceless bodies in play that Hexeblaumon can just freeze. As for some of the top meta decks, Hexeblaumon makes for a fantastic tech against them in any list that can build up to blue level 6s, as previously discussed. Against Imperial Dramon, Hexeblaumon shuts down early aggro, removes partition from their stack, and bottom decks the annoying Davis and Ken dual tamer. Iceclad is completely clutch into the new Mother Reaper control decks, since you can beat over the Mother Reaper without sweating your DP. And Hexeblaumon will spin Shoto Kazama and their other tamers to the bottom of the deck as well, denying them some much needed resources. Into things like Dextodogoromon, you might struggle a little bit, even with your ability to destroy their key sources like the Dorugreymon or Mindling Tamers, because their top end can resist deletion and blow you out in return, and the amount of resources that they can amass and recur is probably more than Hexeblaumon can handle on its own. Really, how good Hexeblaumon is will come down to your local meta, especially how tamer and big blocker infested it is. And of course, as long as its own archetype is still slacking, it'll depend on what you can pair it with as well. Hexeblaumon, in essence, is either the perfect storm or a faint breeze. Alright, and that should wrap things up for blue and for Hexeblaumon. Next time, we'll see what kind of mess we can make with yellow and one of the more intriguing new Digimon to debut in Liberator. In the meantime, let me know which decks you're playing right now and which decks you're excited to build in the first of our upcoming special booster sets. For me, if I'm not totally broke, I will be very happy to update my Lucemon deck. Big if, but hey, shiny cardboard does strange things to people.